The 2016 Board of Trustees of the Urbana Free Library have come to order. Can we have a roll call vote? Roll call.
Steve Williams. Here. Anna Merritt. Here. Ann Haho. Here. Beth Stein. Here. Chris Shearer.
Here.
Mark Niven.
Here.
Michael Weissman.
Here.
Bill Brown. Oh, Jeff
He's
Cook.
here.
Walking through the door.
Walking in the door, just say his name.
That's right.
Here.
Let's see, there's present and absent and walking through the door right here.
Additional corrections or modifications to the agenda, I'll just do it. The item number 5 is not going to be on the agenda, so do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Approve. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Do we have public comment? Seeing no one rushing to the podium, we'll have a presentation by Celeste and crew on the proposed budget.
All right, thank you very much. You have in your board packet 2 different versions of the budget. I've been told that you appreciate seeing the full details at this time of the year for the breakdown departments, but that during the rest of the year you prefer to see the summary versions of that you both. So you can see those as well as a budget document, narrative talking about the budget. And then there are a couple of things like the chart of what the wages would look like if you approve this budget with a 3% wage scale increase. And then there's a report that we have to file with the state. We have to make it public. Who is compensated more than $75,000 a year? And so that is in there also, although I have 2 additions of staff that I missed, so which is why we put it out there, so if there are any errors. So I've got 2 more librarians to add to that list. And it's full compensation, not just wages. So that's why there's health insurance, then days of leave that are allowed to people on that list. So briefly, I want to show you some charts that speak to why some of the numbers are in there. And I'm going to flip off a couple of lights. See if we can make this easier. How's that?
Better.
You see okay?
Yep.
So comparing fiscal 16 that we're in right now to fiscal 17, you can see that it actually looks pretty close. We are anticipating putting aside more in the fund balance lines in fiscal 17. That will be in part because we're going to be putting aside money for the IT capital investments for future spending. If you look at the gray, that's the total materials, it's very close. It's within $2,000 of each other, so we're keeping the materials budget flat, but we're adding just over $1,000 for microfilm expenses for the archives. Looking at the non-staff expenses, including cafe expenses, it's $20,000 more in fiscal 17, and then the wages and other staff expenses is just $6,000, almost $7,000 more. So the budgets are fairly close in nature. If you look at this, you can see with the pie chart, looking at the budget as a whole, primarily the budget is staff oriented. It is the service industry as a library, so 72% are wages and things like retirement, FICA, health insurance. And when we look at the standards that the state sets forward, this is right at the top of what their recommendations are, so right within their limits. The fund balance is 1%, the materials is about 10%. We'd like to keep bumping that up. Right now, we feel fairly confident that we're serving our patrons with the 10%, but that has been a goal that the board has stated that as we are able to, we can bump that up a little bit higher. We were doing a little bit better percentage-wise, but then the FICA and the IMRF and the Ameren money that was being paid for by the city and that was not recognized in the library's budget has been recognized in the library's budget, and it's going to take us some time to find extra, quote-unquote, extra money to account for the $400,000 of income that is now shown in the library's budget that we didn't show before. So we look to continue to expand the materials budget, but we didn't find a place to do that this year yet. And then the non-staff expenses include the cafe. So things like programming is in the non-staff centralized expenses, insurance, building maintenance and repair, things like that. So that's 17% of the budget. Looking at use of the library in a couple different ways, I've just got 2 slides to show you. you know that we have the self-check machines and that you have allowed patrons to be able to renew their items more. And so we've taken a look at the total circulation of our library, and I want to say, oh, that didn't come out right, but at the bottom right, it should say year-to-date, large, except it says small, 2015 to 16. We're only 7 months into the year, so that circ data looks less because it's not the whole year. But if you look at 13-14 versus 14-15, our circ went up quite a bit. And if you look at the gray that's patron-initiated, you can see that people are self-checking and renewing more than they were before, in part because you allow them to. And you can see that staff-initiated responses, where patrons walk to the desk and interact with staff, is decreasing as the other is increasing. So we are allowing patrons to use the libraries in the way that they want to, and this is the trend that we're seeing, and we'll continue to watch that and staff accordingly and look at how we can allow patrons to use the library in the ways that they want to. And looking at program attendance, we have prioritized programming. Our programs are very popular. You can see that over the years, there is a general overall upturn in programming attendance. The number of programs has gone up as well, but we thought that looking at the number of attendees would be something you might be more interested in. So it went up, went down a little bit, and it's on another upward trend. So I just wanted to show you a couple of highlights. You get this board packet statistics every month. We have experienced some problems getting you the most current statistics, so we had to hold off this month. One of the places that shows OCLC circulation, the circulation across the country and across the state, they're now giving us the numbers 10 days into the month, which is different than before, so we're going to have to figure out how to get you current data that is true data. And so for next month, we'll have a better handle on what that looks like. Do you have questions about just these handful of slides?
Actually, just a comment. I
Yes.
like the pictorial representation showing the trends. I mean, I like reading numbers, but this is just, very, very effective.
And that FY15 is still to date, isn't it?
We're in 16 right now.
Or we're in 16?
And it would look so tiny, I didn't want to show it because only 7 months in, that would also look stubby. So I can tell you that we're on track and that we are ahead of it last year, year to date.
Okay.
So I expect that it will be a higher number than that 30,111. Especially after the fairy tale ball on Friday. Which you're all invited to.
I like those two formats. I think the summary, if I see something on summary, I want to dig in further to, I can go do that. So I like that a lot. I just want to make sure I understand something. The Ameren money,
Yes,
we got the bills, but we also got the budget allocation, right?
that is correct.
Okay, something you said made me think it didn't come out that way, but,
Yeah, sorry for any confusion there.
so, okay, thank you.
But that money wasn't recognized before. The city got the free gas.
Right.
So there was no money,
Right.
except if we went over the therms. And now there is money. So that is an increase in our revenue, which we would then look at as a whole as we try to find increase in a percentage from the materials budget.
But the increase in revenue is not expected to be as much as the bill might be. Isn't
We
that right?
expect, actually, the city was very fair in its, how it looked at the budget for gas, and we expect that it'll be actually underneath the 33,000. So I think that this year we will be able to set a little bit of money in the fund balance. And it may be that we just put it in the big fund balance, or you may say, let's set up a little bit of a gas fund balance so that we know in the future how much we've saved, or maybe we keep an Excel spreadsheet on the side. We'll do something so that we can track our gas use compared to the amount that we receive from the city through Ameren, from this Ameren through the city.
But it's not only gas, it'd be air conditioning in the summer too, wouldn't it?
Well,
Ameren-
everything runs year-round.
Yeah.
Because of the way the HVAC system is built, the electricity and the gas are running, the boilers are running year-round.
We pay electricity separately? I mean, the Ameren is just for gas, right? The 33,000?
That 33,000 is just, it is given to us to pay for the gas. Our electricity bill is a separate bill. They come on the same bill, but we track them separately
Right.
so that you can see them in the expense lines separately.
I had a couple questions about the staffing.
Sure.
For the admin kind of fill-in positions, the 11,000 or something you wanted to add for part-time administrative help, basically. Sounded like there were 2 or 3 different tasks involved. Do you anticipate hiring people for that, or finding people in the library that have those skills and just giving them extra hours, or?
We would like to hire some people, but we're trying to figure out what is the best first place to start. So we know we have particular needs. For example, MC is the IT manager, and he's doing all the higher level thinking work, as well as plugging in mice. So it could be that we hire someone hourly, so many hours a week to help him with that. It could be that we're able to hire some type of HR professional or facilities manager, again, so many hours a week to assist us in doing those jobs that require specialty work. $11,000 isn't going to get us a lot. No, it's not. It could get us IT help. That's about what it could get us. 10 to 12 hours, 10 to 15 hours a week is right in there.
And then for, I think it was the CERC clerks.
Okay.
You were adding additional part-time, you're adding some CERC people to the help desk, is that what that was? Or you're shifting some hours or something?
We're shifting hours. We had an employee leave last year after the budget for this year was set. A part-time employee left. So instead of replacing that part-time employee with another part-time employee, we have allowed the current part-time employee to pick up hourly hours. We filled in with hourly staff. So sometimes the person picks it up as hourly, sometimes part-time.
So is it a different job description that they're doing?
Same job. It's the same job. But having that part-time person there is a benefited position. So we've left the position there to say that we have flexibility. We could choose to fill that position with a part-time person with benefits. But currently, since part-time people pick up a bunch of those 20 hours a week, we know that we can cover the sick leave, IMRF, and other things that they earn while they pick up those extra hours.
So,
I'm not answering your question.
no, I think, no, you are. We're
Okay.
getting there. So if that person ends up picking up another 25% and they're working 75%, do we pay benefits on the 75% or just on the 50%?
We pay total benefits for the total hours worked in that position.
Okay. I just want to make sure that was still the case because
Yes.
they are doing the same job. So
Yes.
we should get the same benefit.
And that is why we were leaving the position. But when people who are part-time pick up the above their 20 hours, they're paid from that hourly wage line. So we want to recognize that, otherwise we have to keep coming back to you. So, but the benefits have been left in the system to acknowledge that we expect that still to be the case, and so that we're not shortchanging ourselves later.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Oh, I did have one more. I think we already passed the consent agenda, but there was like a $10,000.
We didn't actually yet.
Oh, okay. Then I'll wait.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I see that our cafe were 3,000, which isn't bad considering the trade-off it would be to staff full-time. What were we last year?
Actually, it was very similar. Dawn pulled numbers again, and about 23% of the people regularly are coming in and out of the Race Street doors. And last year, about this time, we estimated that with cafe wages and paying for the food and other miscellaneous things, if we look at revenue and wages and the work that the cafe staff do while on desk that we have to pay them for if we close the cafe, like shelving items and doing special projects, and the number of books that are sold at the cafe at $3 a piece.
Yeah.
Then if you add those things up together, we come within $3,000 of breaking even of the total cost of running the cafe.
And those sales of books are going into the cafe funds and not the Friends? There.
They go into the library's funds designated as cafe book sales, so
Okay.
we know it's different. And they have asked us that we spend that on special big things like the awnings on the front porch that were $8,000. They don't want that rolled into just the library's operating. They want to be able to say, here's the special things that the Friends have bought for the library. So we do keep it in our funds. It is in our fund balance. It is.
So Friends are kind of still considering it their outlet.
They considered our money, but we have a respectful agreement that before we purchase something out of that, that we'll let them know so that they can say, yes, that's a great idea.
Okay.
When were the cafe prices increased, and have you noticed a difference? And will that ultimately reduce that 3,000 gap or not?
It's been just a couple of months. Kathy, do you remember the exact month?
September, it was
Oh,
Labor
wow,
Day weekend.
longer than I thought.
Labor Day weekend.
Oh, that's right, that's right. So sometimes of year, when we have more programs, we see more income come through the cafe, so we're entering a big programming stretch. I expect to see it come up, and we'll see. We'll see. We're trying to make it a smaller and smaller gap. We'd like it to be self-sufficient. But cafes typically don't tend to make a profit in places like this in parks.
Has there been a lot of pushback on the price increase?
No.
I didn't think so. I mean, yeah, okay.
No, it's still a bargain. It was a real bargain before. But what about charge cards? What is the minimum price of a cup of coffee that could be purchased with a charge card, and we wouldn't lose money on it, I guess?
Remember what our minimum, I know we do have a minimum, is it $2?
That's a tricky question, and I can get back to you, but I don't want to misanswer.
Yeah.
Because there are limits you can set on debit cards, but not on credit cards. There's state laws about that.
Yeah.
So we don't have a minimum as far as
Well, I know
understand.
some places do, and
Well,
that's just,
well.
I wonder where that cutover was, and whether that would help or hurt too, I don't know.
It's a couple bucks.
You
It's
will
couple
lose a
bucks
lot of
that-
money if you do that.
To have a minimum?
No, if you let people use a credit card for a $1 cup of coffee.
You can, but,
Don't do that, because
well,
You're
we're
gonna-
doing it now, I believe. So
for
Karen
that
said
small
it-
amount, debit is okay, but the other credit card can
Let
be
me-
devastating for the merchant.
It is expensive to have the account. So let me report back to you next month. I can absolutely get you the real information. I don't want to speculate. But we've been doing okay, and we're seeing that people are paying their fines and fees online, which is a good thing for us as well. So we expect that to generate more revenue for us, so
And there's a budget line for credit card fees.
there is.
Is that cards that you use for purchasing, like P cards or something like that, or?
We have to pay to have the credit card option available, and that's what those fees are.
Okay,
Now,
that's strictly cafe related?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
the circulation desk as well, and the archives.
Oh, okay.
So we are not, I'm not aware that we're paying fees to have credit cards. That the library uses. That is what we pay to offer credit card as a service to our
Okay,
patrons.
got it, okay.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
It looked like we were also increased, or the cost of copying was going up or something. We aren't making money on copying anymore. Or have we raised prices on that, or is that prohibitive? Or?
We did offer, we did raise prices this year on color copies by 50 cents, I want to say, and then we raised black and white copies by 5 cents from 10 to 15 cents. What we're seeing, the difference in that budget line is that we got a new printer upstairs. It's a black and white and color printer, and we've had to order more toner, and that's more expensive. And so we are evaluating what we print in color. We've actually pulled back the number of program flyers in color we would print and put out, relying more on the community calendars that we've got, and doing more things like creative things like the black and white fairy tale ballboard bookmarks that you would have seen in your
Oh,
packet.
okay, so that includes your use. I thought it was just the
No.
use from patrons.
Thank you. The copy revenue covers all use of copiers.
Okay.
And we've got a really nice deal so that we get a certain amount of free black and white copies and free toner for our copiers. So as much as possible, we use those machines. And it's a really reasonable deal, but color is expensive.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Celeste.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve, and we're going to take these separately, board meeting of February 9th?
So moved.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Anybody see any corrections that needed to be made? If not, all approve, say aye. Negative, say aye. No. Okay, approval of payments of bills for February 10, payroll of February 19, bills of February 25, and payroll of March 4. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second to that?
I did have a question.
Any
on that.
questions?
Just a question on there was a $10,000 charge for equipment or something from Champaign Library. Do you remember what that was? Is that a typical charge?
We pay Champaign a couple times a year for participating in the Polaris
Okay.
program.
That's it.
Any other questions? If not, all those all those in favor of approving the payroll bills, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Respectful work environment policy. We had it handed to us last time. There were some questions. I think Anna got those ironed out, didn't you?
Yes.
And you saw what the result of that is. Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Is there any question? Anna, do you want to? No?
We had a wonderful discussion that's,
Okay. All those in favor of approving that policy, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, the March budget amendment. Is there any explanation needs to be given, Celeste?
Let me ask if you have any questions.
Okay, any questions on it before we have a motion? Pretty much a movement activity. Is there a motion to approve the amendment to
So
March
moved.
budget? Did I hear?
yes.
Oh, is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. More discussion of Chapter 9. As you know, we've started, last time we would have some discussion about facilities, and so we had chosen Chapter 9, and Anna agreed to help facilitate a short discussion, and that everybody would have read, so it's a matter of, Anna, you take over.
Okay, yes, I am assuming that everybody has read it. We're not going to read it aloud together. And I think the only thing I am going to point out is that on the bottom of page 47, there is a reference to something called Appendix L of Serving Our Public 2.0. Even our esteemed leader cannot find that document.
Oh, I found it,
So-
and it's there, but it's from 1997, and I had several issues with it because of its age. One of the things they are talking about is space for card catalogs.
Good for you.
They're talking about like 50 square feet for quote-unquote microcomputers. I'm going like, this is totally out of date. Yeah. I don't think that, I found the appendix, I didn't copy it, because it wouldn't let me copy either. But there were a couple of things in there that struck me as very odd, like card catalogs.
That's wonderful. I would have printed that off and distributed it if I'd found that.
No, I couldn't print it, it wouldn't let me print.
Well,
Stick it right
could
next to the
find-
National Geographic.
I could order it from Amazon, and we
No,
got
don't,
three.
because I'll find
No,
it.
I
No, I don't, yeah, and, no, I don't think we need to. And we found 3.0, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway,
I found it.
we will,
And we don't want to go there.
no, we don't need to go there. We
It's
will.
space things are wonky in terms of what's going on now.
Well, and the interesting thing is that the updated version of this Serving Our Public doesn't have, there it is, it does not have this list. So we're thinking it probably isn't a very good list. Now we have the confirmation.
It is there, but it's separate from that.
Yeah, okay.
When I search,
Okay. So that
that's my job.
presentation start with a joke. That was the joke. Now we go on. I also would direct fellow trustees to look at the TUFL website, Your Right to Know. Look down under Planning Studies and find something called Space Assessment Preliminary Update dated 2013. That is the latest document relating to this facility, which would be useful for you to see. I have a copy here. I'm not going to go through that either. That's something that you can all look at as we proceed on this process of looking at the facility. I'd like to start by saying that we as trustees know that the facility is an issue, is a constant issue. Kathy gave us an update last month, facilities update. Seems like we talk about facilities in this facility in some way or other almost every month. The budget memo that we just had reference to talks about moving 30,000 items relating to media from behind the circ desk out in, that is also a facilities issue. And then we have a more general question, such as the one that Jeff raised last month in a discussion about the, what's it called, the makerspace. Programs that use space will always require us to think about how best to use the space we have, and are we using it best? That's part of this entire facilities issue. And then, of course, there's always parking, which I think everybody who uses and loves this library is concerned about. That's also obviously a part of this. Tonight, we're only beginning to think about facility issues. We're not going to solve anything. We're not even going to talk about specific issues. What I think would make more sense is to talk about how do we want to go about figuring out what a plan for the future would look like. Issue?
The meeting.
Oh, okay. So, we're going to embark on a strategic plan. We do not know exactly when. We've talked about that several times. And a part of that will be the whole issue of the facility. So, what I'd like us to do this evening, and I don't want to take a whole lot of time on this, just I want to get the juices flowing. That's what Celeste and I also kind of agreed on would make the most sense. If anybody has specific questions about what's in Chapter 9, we can discuss them. But what I'd like us to talk about is what do we need to consider, and how are we going to go about figuring out what is needed? So if anybody has something to say in that way, it would be useful.
The first thing I came to with this is, where does the program statement come with the facility? I mean, chicken or egg? Is the program statement the first thing we have to do? Because then we know what kind of facilities we need to meet those program needs. Or do we know that there are some bad things or some things we'd like to see done, so maybe we could program? So I don't know where we begin.
And I have actually another question, is what timeline are we talking about? Are we talking about all programmatic needs for facilities? Are we talking about short-term versus long-term? So what type of a prioritization are we thinking of? Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have,
No. That's right.
yes, and I'm not here to determine these
Understood.
things, but these are the kinds of questions. I think we need to just write all these statements down and then sort them out as we approach the actual process that we'll embark on. I'll have you note that the document on the website does start with preliminary program updates for the facilities thing. So when you look at it, it's interesting that, had you looked at that?
No.
Or you just happened to, all right, you hit the
No, that's
nail
what
on
I
the
was.
head. They talk about the uses. So that is one way one can go about it.
Yeah, it's typical to go out with a program statement. What do you want to do? What do you want to do you can't do? What are you doing right now that you may not want to do? And you always want to keep in mind that while we're planning and thinking for near term, institutional buildings last 75 years. So we have to be thinking long term too. And that tends to be less designs and quality and flexibility of systems and so forth. But
And both of you are talking, or all three of you are talking about program, but from whose perspective? That's one of our big issues, I think. I mean, there are a whole lot of audiences that we need to take into account. And I think one of our tasks is going to be, which audience do we want to get our answers from, or our questions from? Both answers and questions.
So another thing is, I'm thinking, of Kathy's excellent presentation last time was we had a number of items, talk about windows and even carpeting. And I would almost classify that under an R&R, a repair and renovation, that maybe I wouldn't necessarily put under a program statement. I keep that as a separate R&R running list. And to me, a program statement is when you're really making some fundamental changes with your use of space. But yeah,
Yes.
again, it's just the way I'm looking at
Yeah,
things.
yeah. I suspect our public is more interested in programs and what they can do in the building, and will assume that the windows let light in and not too much wind, right?
Incorrect
So
assumption, but,
I think it's absolutely accurate that you separate those, and they assume that the heating will work in the winter.
I think so.
And the cooling in the summertime.
Yeah.
So we probably need to separate those, that's,
But then when it comes down to prioritization for paying for things, that's when
Yeah.
you maybe have to have a different type of priority scheme.
and I'd also like to throw in, I think it's very important to get staff input, because they use the facility in a completely different way from the public that walks in the front door.
I thought of that because I thought the staff knows how bad the back rooms are, and we don't. We see the functioning, but I would imagine that if they had a choice, some of the first higher priorities would be space to operate in the back room, probably. Anka is grinning.
We always need more space.
Well, some department heads and managers don't have an office, so
Yeah.
at a very basic level, it's hard to have private conversations as a supervisor when you have to leave the area with your colleague and go to a conference room. It's working, we're making it work, but yeah, it's not like Anka can have private work calls in her office because she shares it with 4 people, as one example.
So we're talking about public space
And private
versus,
space.
or and, let's not make it versus, public
Public.
and work spaces. That's an important distinction. And then finding out what the public is interested in. There are a lot of different publics. I've been thinking about this, obviously. I'm at an advantage here, and you are all at a disadvantage, but how do you find out what your various publics are interested in? Obviously, the people who come in and use the library, one big, huge group, but the various organizations that use this building, I think that's also something we probably should take into consideration, but how do we find out who they are, or who they might be?
Well,
People who might use it, but we don't even know that they would.
I think with the people who are already using it,
That's
there's
easy.
no, there's no
That's
problem.
what- yeah.
For trying to guess what other types, we're lucky because libraries are pretty universal. And so there's a lot of other libraries in towns with some overlap with this one, maybe university towns. And so presumably there are data on what everybody else is doing. And so we can find out if there's some particular thing that we're not doing that they are, where we wouldn't know locally because we're not doing it. If there is any category like that.
Particularly by size. Our size of community, what do they
Yeah,
have?
you know, look at Ann Arbor and
Yeah.
Madison and Columbia, Missouri, and various places, and see if there's something going on there that we aren't doing, anything major. And,
Which isn't available anyplace else, which is important. But this also gets at what Jeff was, I think, articulating. We have to think about whether we want to do something and whether we want to make space available for this, that, or the other thing, and how do we determine that? I'm sure we'd all like to have an enormous library and take care of everybody's needs, but we can't do that. So how do we determine what's,
So I love this stuff, but I'm really frustrated in most of the experience that I had with these sort of planning things, because quite often they end up in, let's have a day when users can come in and tell us, and these random ideas,
Yeah.
and then you talk to the staff and you get some random ideas, and they all get put on a board, and then you have to go and vote with these stupid things. It's like, I just hate that, because it doesn't seem like, I would much rather, I mean, the librarians and the people that run the library, they're in the profession. They see where the world's going. I mean, they're, I would think, would be the biggest input into where we want to go. Do we want twice the size building for whatever purposes? And in maker spaces, they know what's happening around the country. They should be able to sort of say, well, you know, it's a flash in the pan. Next week it's going to be something else, so we shouldn't go there necessarily. But, I mean, us to sort of decide the big issues, I think is kind of, I mean, or, I don't know, I just, sometimes you get involved in these, well, let's do this, and it's, you find out that it's because the particular person has a particular interest in that, and I think we should do everything to not do that. But makerspace, I don't want to get the wrong impression, I felt bad last week, but I mean, like, I really love this makerspace stuff. I just wondered
No,
if
I thought
there
you
was a-
raised a very good, almost philosophical issue, and it was I thought it was important.
Well, it could be, though, in the future, libraries could be 90% that kind of stuff, you know? Books could just be on the side. Archives, way on the side, you know? So. No, but I mean, you know, that's, you guys know where
Not
the world's
after we
going.
get the stuff from Chanute.
Well, archives are going to be
Virtual.
digital. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we already have lots of digital content.
But those are the kinds of things, you see, we might think, oh, we've got all this stuff we need to store, but they really know that we're talking digital. So instead of a building, maybe we need to buy giant scanners to preclude the necessity of a building.
So I think this kind of begs the question of the strategic plan. And so, you know, if you read, and in the most wonderful sense, you know, as I was reading this, what struck me said, okay, well, you know, your facilities plan follows your library plan, which is your strategic plan. And really all this conversation is talking about what's our plan for, because of past history. Strategic plan is kind of has a very pejorative meaning right now to this library community, but a strategic plan can be a really good tool. It's basically saying, answering the questions, what are we trying to do, how are we trying to do it, where are we going? And it just plan.
I think facilities especially have, I mean, it's nice to do a long-range plan, but people feel really funny about going more than 5 years with a strategic plan.
Right.
With facilities, as he said, they're going to be here for many years.
Right.
Right.
So I really like the idea of strategic plans that posit some future goal, because you can always change it.
Yes,
But it
yes.
gives you something to shoot towards,
Yes.
and that helps you with facilities.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I know you're right, I guess I hate those sticky things, that's my big problem.
But, yeah, I want to go back to that for a minute. It is, you can do a strategic plan every 3 months. You don't do a building every 3 months. When you get a building, a new building or a big addition, you really do get an opportunity to plan it. And typically, the needs have been pent up for so long that everything gets thrown out on the table. And you wind up with a triumph of realism over optimism, because you plan it, and you plan it this big. The architects say, well, we can only do it this big, and the bonds you sell only allow you to pay for this much. So you're always, there's a reason contingency is in every level of those. So I think you kind of look at what are we doing that requires specialty space is one option. People need meeting rooms. If we turn this place into conference rooms for people to have club meetings and group meetings and so forth, we'd use it all the time, 24 hours a day probably. But that's not what we do. There are other places to meet if you're in town. So who's using, what's our specialty? Do we have what do we want to build on? What do we do as an accommodation because we can? These are all questions. But it's all going to start, and it's going to come back with money.
Yeah.
What kind of metrics do we have as far as whether we are at capacity or what the demand is for these kind of spaces or other spaces that people want to use? How often people waiting for materials, if at all? You know, are there, do we have any metrics that will kind of, I'd like to see it kind of demand-driven, depending on what people are looking for, or maybe even if there's a way to survey people that used to have a library card and don't have it anymore, maybe there was something we weren't doing for them that we could have done better. Do you guys get a sense of that just from working here?
We're writing, sorry.
So that would be one of my questions.
What is the biggest room in the building?
Well, the second floor, I would think, is the biggest room.
Upstairs?
I mean, if you think of a space, this is the biggest public space to come and meet with closed doors, but the collections, where the collections live, are the biggest spaces.
But it's broken down into different, the spaces that are used differently, but without walls. But there's still,
There are bookshelves there.
there's that
So-
area with the bookshelves,
Correct.
there's the area where the computers are, and
Yeah.
we just don't have them walled off. So it depends on how you define the word space. But I think it would be very interesting to hear from all of the management level,
And
how
what
they
they're
see
hearing.
the space and what really works well and where the major problems are. I think that would be very interesting.
And I would say part of that is reflected in the 2013 document about space planning, because the architects, I wasn't here, but I've been told that the architects did a lot of work with the staff, asking questions about what the needs were as perceived in 2013 and how those things were going. So for example, small circ workroom is certainly in there. And we've taken down some shelving, actually, so that gives us some more space. We've created a space, an office for MC, so now there's more space in administration, and he has a place to set computers out to be able to work with them, multiple computers at a time, and I have to take it down and put it back up. So we've made some inroads in filling some needs. We got, so trying to reuse places that we can. But sure, we could certainly revisit that internally and bring you back some more information, but that's fairly current information.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's the dreaming.
There's
But
dreaming.
that's another exercise, a separate exercise.
So the university, one of the things I think they did really well, and maybe you'll disagree, is they had this fellow, Dave Dressel. He had a plan for the whole campus. And man, he would stick to that plan. If somebody gave a building, he wouldn't say, no, it doesn't fit the plan. He'd work around it. But you know, that's why the campus, believe it or not, is so well organized, because somebody maintained that long-range vision, even though programs came and went and people gave money for this and that and the other thing, you know. But that's what I regret most, is that there's no grand vision.
Yeah, the master plan is interesting that you brought that up, because like anything, a master plan has to be maintained, and so that master plan is an example, was good, but then it pretty much went out of, it just kind of expired maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, and only right now is there going to be an effort to start a new master plan. So what happens, you're correct. So it was good up to about 7, 8 years ago, and then there were so many different needs,
Right.
and there wasn't a master planning committee that would meet regularly to say, do we need to adjust that? It just simply, there's a void, there's a gap.
Yeah.
And so master planning it's great, but then there has to be some maintenance to it. So we had the 2013 effort here, and that was a good thing, but you know, some of us probably haven't looked at it since 2013 and saying, oh, okay. So it's building that into your process, and I think that's something that would be good to look at for the library as well, for the board.
Yeah, Dave was a really brilliant campus planner. But we also need to think about how the level he operated on. He was really extraordinary at seeing how to fit buildings together. So we did the southern quad, the east-west axis there between Huff and all that. He kind of saw that it was planned for 100 years ago and never fully implemented, or somebody plopped down a building in the middle of it. But I think in our case, that's less our need. I mean, we have the block to think about, so we
Exactly.
but we got to think of what's going on inside here too. And that's a different set of skills. So.
One of the things we've all talked about many times in many areas is our parking problem. Has the city ever given consideration to helping us solve our problem of parking? Is there a commission that is meeting on parking as such and say, oh, the Urbana Free Library really has a parking problem. What can we do to facilitate that?
There actually was a parking study.
Yeah, we had that.
And
Okay.
that is
With that
on the
new
website as
design.
well. You can take
Okay.
a look, and we can take a look at that later. We can just pull that maybe right up and take a look, and you can see that it was a very big document, so they're broken into 3 parts, and you can take a look. But in a nutshell, there's parking kitty corner from here in the public parking lot. There's parking around the building at different spots. People park at Cunningham Township. You had a question that came up about how often do we see people cutting mid-block? And it really depends on the time of day. Do we need another crosswalk because people are parking in the township and walking across the street, including staff who park back there? I knew it. So parking is a problem. People want it to be free. The city makes revenue on it. It would be hard to validate parking and give it free without knowing if people are really in the library, using the library versus not.
Yeah.
So unless the library were to purchase, or the city were to purchase more property, which is something that is laid out as one of the options in the campus plan that Bill and Jane are going to start looking at back in 2013, a couple of options that would address the parking. But the parking study talks about that too.
Is the new downtown to campus to downtown transportation plan for Green Street going to affect this? Anyway, I know they're looking at trolleys or what, but
I don't know about trolleys, but it's going to be nicer looking on the street. There'll be wider bike lanes, potentially a little bit more greenery, but it will give us a better driveway situation because of the bike lane there. It will give people a better turn radius to get into our parking lot, which is important.
Yeah.
So that is one benefit we'll see, but I don't think that's coming till either 18 or 19. They're not going to be here until 18 or 19 working on that part of MCOR.
MCOR, that's, yeah. Couldn't think of it.
Well, I don't want to drag this out too long.
I was
Does
just
other
going to
people have?
say, if there's something else somebody wants to bring up, but I think we got some, let's start it. And if anybody thinks of anything, bring it up at any time, right?
And then I would just ask if there are other kinds of topics, either in the trustee facts file or in the law book that you've got, are there other topics that you want to talk about as a board, having read the chapter? Because I've been putting some ideas out as to things for professional development for you, but are there things that you want to have a substantive discussion about?
I'm not sure about that, but I want to go back to
Chapter
something.
Okay,
Planning.
okay.
Would you lead it, Beth?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, next meeting, Beth will lead us in chapter 7. Everybody read it.
But I want to go back to something you said earlier, too. It's probably worthwhile looking to see what sort of metrics there are. Now, a lot of that's just voodoo. I mean, I know, it was at the university, because I helped run something called the Orange Book for many years, but there can be some good thinking behind what goes in there, too. And it's probably worth looking at to see what's out there for quantitatively plan a library, how big versus what. And I realize it depends on when you do this too. If we were doing this in the 60s, we'd probably be looking for parking lots for jetpacks or something like that. But you can only do the best you can with where you're at. So
Right. I think the one thing I would say is flexibility in the use of space is the number one thing that is being discussed. Because whatever the library is now, it will be something different later. The spaces will be used differently. Looking at energy efficiency things as we look forward to any substantive changes, we will be able to incorporate solar or geothermal into our planning. Those are something that we've got on our minds. And that other libraries are also looking at.
And the other thing to keep in mind is whatever we do it right the first time. You know, don't try to stretch the dollar and cheap out. I mean, I saw this in the school district. You could compare Wiley School with Yankee Ridge, and Wiley was built right. Yankee Ridge was built so cheaply that other school districts throughout the state sent people here to see, how did you build it for so little cost per square foot? And of course, the two main traffic corridors in the building meet right in front of the gym. There's no room for anybody to pass. There's no lockers in the hallway. It sounds like you got 1,000 snare drummers on the library pod roof when it rains. That's how you build it so cheaply. So build it right. Even if it's smaller, do it right.
And if they didn't get the message looking at Yankee Ridge, go look at Brookings.
Yeah. Or Leo. Look at
Anyway, but
pictures,
that's a different topic.
which is done right.
So,
But
anyway, thanks. It was a
Thank
good
you.
discussion. And thank you for taking notes, because there wasn't any way I could do that.
Between us.
Great,
Yeah.
thanks.
Okay, let's move on to reports from the Friends. I don't know if there's anything to report. Is there?
Friends,
Oh, yeah.
yes, we have a meeting. The book sale is on the schedule. This is the flyer. I think there's several of them upstairs, and I didn't bring any down, but
Me neither.
okay. It runs from Thursday, March 31st, to Monday, April 4th. And these pretty flyers are upstairs. I'm sure you can pick them up. And do come to the sale. It's going to be a good one. For a change. Just to bring them in. That's all.
Okay. The foundation, do you have anything new?
They're not meeting till March 30th.
Might say the foundation is interested in adding board members, so if anybody's got an idea, pass them to me or Celeste, and we'll pass them on to Larry. And Larry has to go off this year. He's been on the board a number of years, so they will be electing a new chairman. And we have a couple of people in mind there that maybe are being pursued, so I don't know where that stands. But foundation is in for some moves. Heartland.
I think everything's swinging along. There was some major event, and the assistant to the director just quit all of a sudden, and it was all very mysterious. She was she was the person that called everybody and got all the meetings going and sent out minutes and things, and she left a rather raw exit interview, so they're going through that process. So we've had a couple of meetings, but nobody can ever say anything because they don't want to say anything because of legal matters, so I don't really know what went on, but that's the only issue we've had of late. And so they're still processing the budget and this and that, and there are some things that are funded by grants that are going to run out before that they can't fund or won't fund. So, and that doesn't happen for another 6 months or so, but that'll be another critical point in the process.
And we might, I don't know that it was Heartland necessarily, but the meeting that Celeste, Jeff, I, and Larry attended in Bloomington. Interesting, everybody was on the same page until the latecomer came in and said his political nothing, and then blew out before he could talk to anybody. But I do think there was an opportunity for people to meet other board members, other legislators. Scott sat at our table and we filled his ears full. Having sat on this board, though, is the best part of that, because he knows what we're talking about.
Yeah, that was, I'll just say for the record, the Illinois Library Association.
Illinois Library
The legislative
Association.
meetups across the state, and this was the first time there was one in central Illinois, and we had,
They had a number of them throughout the state, and so there's some networking going on there. Administrative report.
Two things. First of all, as Laura said, the Fairy Tale Ball is this Friday night from 6 to 9. And put on your costumes and come join us. And in a moment of weakness, they made me the heralder, so I will announce your name at the door.
Are you like Lord and Lady?
yes.
Yes.
All of Downton Abbey?
Absolutely. The Lord. The other is that on Friday afternoon, after the library closed, Celeste and I received a proposal from the HVAC consultant that the city had hired. So we really don't have facts to give you right now. We barely have looked at it, and so Celeste and I we need to talk, and then we will go ahead and bring forth something to you.
But as you told me, you didn't feel that they had answered everything that you had requested in it, so it really needs some work before we take a look at it.
Needs a little bit more tweaking, so we'll get that to you as soon as we can, because we're anxious to move ahead.
Sort of along the line of my usual, energy efficiency obsession, I did look into this question of whether
Windows.
whether you could get these cheap acrylic.
Yeah.
And it is possible. They do have they don't make them as big, but they have a way of putting what they call a mullion in, so they can do something this big, and they can hide that behind, and have done some others. And it looks like it'd be on the order of $20,000 for the whole set of big windows, so
Wow.
I'll give you that information. It looks like it's actually doable, so.
That's great.
Okay, in terms of unfinished business or new business, the evaluation committee has sent out, as of today, their evaluation forms. The thing I need to find out is, was her goals a part of that? No.
You can do them separately.
Okay, how are we gonna marry that together?
Well, we don't have the goals as a group.
We don't as a group. Okay, well,
But this is, so, the first part you can think of it as competencies and goals. And so this is the competencies.
okay, okay. Have you got a deadline on those to be returned?
I think the 18th?
Yes. In the
Please,
email.
please, please meet that deadline. It really will tie us up.
18th of March
Yeah.
or April?
March.
March.
Next
I haven't
Right.
seen
Well,
it.
next week, well,
Next week.
I didn't hit my email yet. No, I looked before I left work and it wasn't there.
Is it by email or was it snail mail?
No, I sent it by email.
yeah, we just came in today.
Yeah.
Okay, I just didn't look at the library account yet today, so.
It went out by about, it probably went out about 1:30 today.
Yeah.
I should have seen it. I'll check again, maybe I just.
Check your junk mail, see if it ended up there somehow. Because sometimes when you send one to a whole broad group.
I'll check my junk.
You'll drop it into junk, yeah.
Like I say, we've got to get that done because next meeting, then we'll have a closed session on the tabulation of what that says, right? Yeah, okay.
And I'll get you a self-eval, I just need a couple more days to finish that up.
Good. Figured, yes.
Any other business to come before the meeting? Board? If not, do I hear a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor, please.
Aye.
Aye.